Hey everybody, Adam Schmela back here with the final video. And today what we're going to be talking about is helping you understand the different places and locations inside of the Redtail CRM that you're going to be able to utilize to access your to-do list. Because up until this point, we've spent this entire time learning how workflows work and how to actually attach them to contact records. But unless we actually understand where those tasks are going to show up on the day-to-day basis inside the CRM as we're working it, it's obviously not going to serve its point too much if we're not actually working through the process. So what I want to do is I want to talk to each one of you as if I'm talking to you individually. So if you're watching this alone, well, then I'm just talking to you. If you're watching this in a group setting, though, I want you to think of this as a one-on-one conversation. And the reason that I'm doing that is because I'm going to slowly elevate the overarching reach of the different areas that I'm going to be tapping into Redtail. So what I mean is, for example, the place where you are going to go to find all the tasks that you are responsible for doing is going to be in one of two places from the home screen. Any tasks that are due today are going to show up right here, right in the dashboard, and also up here in the active workflow tasks. So this number right here are this list are only the tasks that are assigned to you. And this list are only the tasks that are assigned to you due today. Unfortunately, there is not an easy and quick way like there is in activities to quickly pull a past due list. So if you get a little bit behind on your workflow tasks, I'll show you how to access that in the reporting section coming up here in a little bit, but there is no quick click fix like there is in activities. Maybe Redtail will improve that at some point in the future. Stay tuned. So again, anything that's due today is going to show up right here. Anything that is assigned to you that is either past due or coming due is going to show up in here. So if we click on this, this will show the list of any and all tasks that are assigned to you for this respective client and what workflow that task is assigned to. Now, one thing that I want you to notice is that within this list, we're able to complete the task right here from this screen. So one of the benefits of doing this is that this, in essence, functions as your running to-do list. So gone could be the days of writing out your things on a scratch piece of paper or on a daily to-do list, though I am, side note, still a big fan of that from a prioritizing the urgent or the important few over the trivial many. So workflows do not prioritize the importance of the tasks. That is going to be your responsibility to do. But having said that, you could just hammer out all of the things that you have on your to-do list by this list right here. So an example of how you do that is if you just click on complete, what it's going to do is it's going to drop down the outcome for that specific task on that specific workflow. You can go ahead and finish that. Go ahead and, again, we really emphasize the getting in the habit of documenting the notes. So you would go ahead and complete that task and it would refresh the page and you would be on to the next one. Now, one thing, and let's just go ahead and bump this to the home screen to show that same thing because that does have the ability. If we update that task now and go back to today's home page, we're going to see that. And I do have the opportunity to do that here on this screen as well. So I can have the same functionality, again, just working on your to-do list. So if we go into this screen right here, again, this just shows all the tasks that I'm responsible for doing. You do have the opportunity to export it as a CSV file. It comes out into an Excel file. So that is a nice functionality as well. So these are the two locations that you can quickly access to see your list of tasks. One other area that I want to draw your attention to is over in the reporting section of Redtail. If you scroll down to the workflow reports, and now you'll see you can pull two different reports. You can pull the high-level workflow report, which just shows all open workflows, or if you want to get more granular, you can pull the workflow task report. Remember how in workflows, a step can have multiple different tasks. This task report is obviously going to pull every task that's out there. So let's just pull the workflow task report. And now what I want to draw your attention to is this little button right here, the filter button. What we do in our office is we basically use this filter as a running 3-week agenda for our Monday morning team meetings. So what we'll do is we will go ahead and pull from last Monday to the following Friday. And this is basically going to be our running agenda. So if I were to apply this filter, again, not a lot's going to show up because of this demo database, but this is our agenda that we're going to basically run through in our team meeting to go through line by line and see if anybody on the team needs any additional information that maybe wasn't communicated in the notes. Again, there's no substitute for just being in front of someone, and that's why I really emphasize the importance of having a weekly structured team meeting. In the absence of that, again, workflows give you the opportunity to independently collaborate and work through that process together. filter. The other aspect that I want to draw your attention to within the filter is that if you're clearing out your dates and you just want to focus on, this is why using categories is so important, why I'm a big fan of categories. Remember how I said in one of the beginning videos, the ability to use a cashiering, and again, disregard our demo database tripling the number of categories. I only recommend, obviously, that you have one of each. But let's say that I want to pull in any of the cashiering workflows because I'm only focused. I would just want to make sure that in the midst of all the open workflow tasks that I have, cashiering by definition is money that is coming in or out of the account. So I really want to make sure that as a team, we're focused on making sure that our clients either get their money into their accounts or that the money leaves their accounts, again, whichever direction that goes. So understand this is one of the benefits of having your categories set on your workflow tasks. From a managerial standpoint, this is also an opportunity for any type of practice manager or advisor that's in the managerial role to go ahead and pull a report of their team to find out things that are past due, maybe things that are still being hung up on. Candidly, usually in my experience, when I find firms that are using this in that manner, it's typically because the reason that the staff is stuck is because there is something that the advisor needed to get to them before they could move on to the next step. So it can be a facilitation of conversation nonetheless. And again, we obviously do the same thing with teams. We really emphasize the ability to use teams as opposed to using individual users. And again, you can segment them and pull reports here from a template standpoint as well. So there's all kinds of different ways in which you can use the filters. I'm a big fan of pulling the due date. This is the only other way. I'll bring back something that I said in the beginning, right? I said there's no ability to pull a past due. This is the only way to pull a past due report. So what I would recommend doing is if you really want to pull everything, just go back here, pull 2018 from maybe January of 2018 up to today, go ahead and pull that filter. I left cashiering on there, but again, you could pull it that way. That would be the best way to do a past due. And again, from here, you have your PDF, your exports. You can also send this to search. So if I send this information right here, it's going to go ahead and send those contacts directly to search. If for whatever reason you needed to do blast emails, this could be applicable if you have your prospecting workflows. So one of the workflows that I have used significantly, I don't use too many workflows myself as an advisor where I'm the only one involved. Again, a lot of it is client service related, but one of the ones that I do use a fair amount of on a day-to-day basis in my own practice is this new prospective client workflow. It's only 6 steps long, but it allows me to stay in front of what we would consider warm relationships or prospective clients that I'm having that ongoing dialogue with. And what I will typically do sometimes is I will go ahead, I'll pull a report. And this is a good tip for advisors that are watching this. Team members, if you're watching this, you might want to tuck this little nugget away and share this with your advisor. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and pull this workflow report. I'll set my filter. And I only want to pull workflows that are based off of the new prospective client. Now, in this one, I don't have any, but again, in your database, if an advisor has 10 to 15 to 20, 25 different relationships that he or she is so-called dancing with and potentially bringing on as new clients, having this workflow report in front of them allows them to focus their energy when we get into prospecting mode or business development mode. It allows us to kind of work in tunnel vision. And so the only things that are showing up on our database in our workflow report here are prospective new client workflows and those conversations. And so being able to focus through all that is a really, really nice way to just kind of get in that mindset of building that habit and building that repetition. That way we're not working on prospective client 1 minute and then we're cashiering the next, and then we're doing data onboarding and data input the next meeting, or next meeting the next task, right? We're focusing our efforts on just one task and just one process. So that's one way to really build that efficiency. What I do want to do though is bring your attention to something as it pertains to that search bar. So remember how doing this when I was clicking on reports, and I click into workflow reports and I click on the workflow task report. What happens from this point forward is that vertical bar that was here is now just a horizontal bar up here. So if I click on more, I can go ahead and toggle back and forth between workflow report and workflow task report right from this little button. So all Redtail does is just move that from a vertical bar to a horizontal bar. Now let's go ahead and say that I want to pull the annual clients. Let me pull a report that has multiple different workflows all based on the same template, because what I'm going to illustrate here is the benefit that I was trying to emphasize before on prospecting. Okay, so as we can see, well, we only have one here, but what I want to emphasize is what happens if you click on a link from a workflow that was pulled from a filtered report. If I click on this, it takes me right into that workflow at the contact level. Now, let's say I go ahead and I complete this step. Type in whatever node is relevant, complete the step. Great, that's done, and it goes on to someone else in my team, and I want to go back to that filter report. Watch what happens when I hit back. I get the confirm form resubmission. The reason that this pops up is because the previous page that I was on was actually a filtered report from Redtail and not a native page. I don't know if I'm using my technical terms correctly there, but that's basically what's happening. And if I hit the back button again, what happens is I get my entire list of workflows and I lose the filter that I had created. So I have to go back and do another annual client service review, pull that filter, and thus I'm going to get the same workflow again, just moved ahead one more step. Now, what I want to encourage you to do, though, and this is actually a video in our weekly Workflow Wednesday tip of the week that we send out. Instead of clicking on this, what I want you to do is I want you to right click and open link in a new tab. And now what I can do is I can just complete this step. I can complete it in here. I complete that step, it's going to document it. It's going to move it down line in the workflow. The next people in line are going to get those tasks assigned to them. And again, in your database, this is already going to be filled out because you spent time assigning the default tasks in the workflow templates to the people in your team that are responsible for doing those tasks. The due date's already going to be assigned, et cetera, right? All that's going to be done. And if it's not, right, if the due date is something that is hard to be specific because it doesn't have a target date set to it, remember that you always have that ability to quickly go in and assign the due date to whatever date it needs to be done, assign it to a team member, whoever that needs to be, etc. One thing that I do want to point out here, if you do find that a template does not have a due date set because it is hard to have a target date in relationship to the start of that workflow, and client appointments are a classic example of that. What I mean by that is from the time, if the target date of the review appointment is the review appointment, there can be a lot of ambiguity between the start of the workflow and the target date of the appointment. So let's use that from an example standpoint to kind of hammer that home. Let's say that a client calls up and says, I need to see Adam in 3 months. Well, the target date of that appointment is the date of the appointment in 3 months. Well, what happens if the next client calls up and says, I need to see Adam in 3 weeks, right? The target date is going to be so different, the beginning of the workflow relative to the target date are on two different timelines. So that's why you're going to see in some of our appointment workflows, there is no due date set for the beginning steps because it's hard to be consistent with the delta between the target date and the start of the workflow. Now, having said that, it is much, 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 much more important that in your workflows, you have the assigned to field completed than it is the due date. Let me repeat that. It's much more important that when you look in your templates, that you have this field filled in than it is that you have a due date. Because even if I didn't have a due date assigned to this right here, if I leave this blank and I assign this to me, at least this is going to show up on my to-do list. So let me open up a new tab and demonstrate this. Go to today's overview. Let me pull up my active workflow tasks. So again, the name of this task was the once appointment is scheduled, modify workflow target date. Right there, it showed up. Now, is the due date there? No, it's not. But at least it's showing up on my to-do list. If, on the other hand, I had the due date assigned, let's say that that was supposed to be done tomorrow, but this was blank, and I update the task. Now watch what happens when I refresh this. That goes away. This task, if it's assigned to if it has a due date assigned, but it does not have someone assigned to it, the only place that this to-do list, that this task is going to, the only place that this task is going to show up is over here in the workflows. And this is the laundry list of every workflow that's assigned in the CRM to every contact, assigned to every individual in the team. So where is this going to be? Well, what did I say? That due date was 4/16/19. So you can see how hard this is, right? It's buried in here somewhere. So that task is going to be buried in there somewhere. So that's why, again, I can't emphasize enough. It's important to have them both done, right? We ideally want to have both of them completed. But if you're only going to have one, make sure, and this is why I emphasize again so much how important it is that within your templates that you have all of these assigned tos already built out and assigned to the right team in your office. Because in the absence of doing that, the only place that this task is going to show up is on the master workflow list, which again, we're just pulling that entire list here from somewhere. Right, that task is going to show up in some report. And the reason it's not showing up here is because these are my active workflow tasks. I'm paranoid trying to find it now, and it's going to be buried in here somewhere based off the date of when that workflow was assigned. So again, make sure that you have this always assigned to someone, and don't ever have your workflows have this blank assigned to me. Now, so back to the problem at hand, right? We want to make sure that we're utilizing, if we're pulling a search, if we're using the reports and we're doing a queried, let me close some of these tabs here. And we're using that workflow task report and we're using that search filter. This is why it's important to always make sure that you're going ahead and right-clicking and opening that up in a new tab, completing it from this tab, and then going back to this one, and we would get that again, open up this next tab. And again, I would close this one out because I'm done with it. I would complete my task, and I would close out this tab, and thus forward, and just keep working that process. So again, kind of working a refresher real quick. You're going to do your tasks based off of one of two places, either on the home page here or under your active workflow tasks. The next step up is going to be in reports. There you can get a little bit more surgical in the types of workflows that you're looking at. And then last but not least is this workflow tab over here. This list shows any and all workflows that are attached to any contact record in your CRM. So let's see here. So we've talked about that. We've talked about the understanding the reporting tool, the importance of filters and the different areas. Also right-clicking on workflow tasks. This basically sums up the different areas in which you can go ahead and pull that information. Again, through these different workflow reports, you can always export them as CSV files, as PDFs. You can send them to search. So if you want to print a phone list, you can always go ahead and pull that as well and export information based off of that. So I hope you understand that these are the basic areas and the different functionalities or the different ways in which you can utilize workflows on a daily basis. One other tip that I would recommend doing, and again, just because you don't have the opportunity to automatically pull a past due report, let's say I get to the end of the day here, and this is probably more an emphasis for team members and support team than it is for advisors, though I would encourage advisors to get in the habit of doing this as well. Let's say, case in point, as we're recording this, it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and I have a task that was due today, but it was one of those important but not urgent tasks, so it's not going to affect the client experience if I don't get it done today and I want to roll it over till tomorrow. Get in the habit of doing a quick edit task and move and roll this date forward one day before you leave for the end of the day. What can very quickly happen, again, in the absence of doing that, is that you just start building up your past due workflow tasks. And if it's out of sight, out of mind, if you're not pulling this report on a daily basis, that's again where some of those things can kind of fall off the wayside. One other recommended strategy is when you log into Redtail every single morning, pull up 2 tabs right away. The first one can be your dashboard. And then what I'd recommend you do is that you pull up this and then just automatically click over into your active workflow tasks. That way you have your list in front of you. You can see which ones you have that you're working on. And as time permits, as your time blocking allows, you can go in here and then just start quickly knocking things out as you have time. That way it's not buried and you don't have to go and search for it all the time. And you have this dedicated screen where you can just start knocking out those lists right from the completed, right from this area. So again, if you have the opportunity, you can always go in here and document notes, et cetera, et cetera. So that concludes our training. I really hope that you found this entertaining and most importantly, beneficial, that it's helped guide you in the application and customization of our workflow tasks. I tell advisors and firms all the time, typically expect a probably 60 days at the minimum, probably 90 to 120 days before your firm gets comfortable working these to the extent that you wonder how you worked with them before. If you do have one-off type questions where you're just stumped and you can't figure out how to do something workflow specific related, let me know. Shoot me an email. I use Loom as a tool to help explain answers, so I'm happy to help you if you have one-off questions. And I wish you all the best in your future journey with workflows. And thank you so much for your investment in our services, in our process, and in our solution. Be well, enjoy the day, and much wishes for continued success.